Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mystics MMOs. I'm your host, Mystic Raven. All right, so today I'm going to go ahead and go over my Paladin build. Now, this is a Templar tank build. Now, this build is not designed to do trials. This build is designed to do your dailies, whether it be normal vets or DLC vets. This build will get you through. And not only that, you're going to have fun as a tank doing so. It brings tanking forward and makes it fun for players even who haven't tanked before. Why? Because it's very interactive. It's not just a boring build. So let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? Now, first thing I want to go ahead and do is go to the character sheet. Now, I'm using max food. That means max health, max magicka, and max stamina. Why? Because I like a lot of resources. Now, you'll see my recovery's kind of like on the low side. So I have 821 recovery, health 551, stamina 661. What you're going to see also is I have a very high-end crit, which is 25.7. So how I've allocated the points is 30 in the magicka, 24, and 10. We're going to be using the Thief Mundus, right, for this build. Why? I'll get into that in a minute. But it's very important that we utilize that specification for this build. Okay, now let's go ahead and get into the sets and explain why I'm using the Thief. Okay, so we're going to be using Night Mothers for this. Night Mother's Gaze. Yeah, totally. Now, this is my primary weapon is still going to be Crusher Infused. But here's the deal why I'm utilizing this set. Add 634 weapon critical, 124 weapon damage critical. When you deal critical damage, you apply major breach to the enemy, reducing their physical and spell resistance by 5,948 for 4 seconds. Now that's very important. Okay, keep this in mind because I'll go ahead and get back to this in a minute. Okay, so we're going to also have a shield infused max stamina. Now see, when I'm on the shield side, you're going to notice that my stamina is higher. But when I go to the staff side, now my magicka is slightly higher. Why do I do that? It's so I can manage resources. So if I'm blocking on the ice staff and I hit a utility like orbs, I'll restore more magicka. If I'm on this side and I hit an orb, I'll restore more stamina. So it makes resource management that much more effective. Now, I'm going to go ahead and once again mention that I do have an ice staff. Now, this is going to be precise, which is very important to the build as well. Now, typically I also run a disenchant, but for this one, I put the shield. Now, if you want to run the disenchant, to weaken the enemy, that's fine. But majority of the time, I don't need it because I'm dealing damage as well. Now, I'm going to go ahead and keep going down. So this is precise. We're going to be running tremor scale with this build. We're going to have infused max health. Now, tremor scale gives us max stamina, but when you activate a taunt ability on an enemy, you cause a Dune Ripper to burst from the ground beneath them after 1 second, dealing 5,970 physical damage to all enemies within 4 meters and reducing their physical resistance by 2,311 for 8 seconds. This can occur every 8 seconds. Now, this is a great set for tanks, right? Because it's a debuff. We're also going to be using the Curse of Night Mother, heavy, infused, max health. We're going to be using a medium, undaunted tremor scale, sturdy, max magicka. We're going to be using the Girdle of Night Mother, sturdy, max magicka. And then our secondary set is Tormentors. So this is sturdy max health. But what's Tormentors do? Well, it gives us max health. It gives us 4% healing taken, another 4% healing taken. But very important, when you deal direct damage with a charge, leap, teleport, or a pull ability, you gain 3,515 physical and spell resistance and taunt the enemy to attack you. Now, the resistance is kind of overkill for this build. Now keep in mind, I'm not running, besides that proc, I'm not running a, you know, mitigating set. I'm running a critical set. But I've set it to heavy because it's craftable. But look, 24 and 22. But when I lay down my circle and I hit my shield, and I'll get into why, my resistance is already 33.8 and 31. The only reason I want Tormentors, because the proc from it will trigger Tremor Scale. So when I go ahead and charge, and it does the taunt, because it will taunt, it triggers Tremor Scale. So it's a built-in combo. Okay? So this is 30, I said, max health. We have Greaves of the Tormentors, Divine. Now, it's very important that I keep Divine. Why? Because I'm using the Thief Mundus. So instead of Infuse, we went with the one Divine, and we have another Divine Torment, Sabatons of Tormentors. Because why? We're dealing critical damage. Necklace of Tormentors, Infuse. Reduce the block cost. Very, very, very important. We got a Healthy, reduce the block cost again. And then, of course, we have our Magicka Recovery on this one. Increase Magicka, max Magicka, and health. Now, the biggest thing with the tank, I usually block shield. But when I start getting low, then I start blocking staff. Why? Because in the skill line into the destruction staff, right? Try focus. Ice staff is equipped. While Ice Staff is equipped, blocking costs Magicka instead of stamina. So this allows me to recoup my stamina while I'm blocking ice. And when I'm blocking shield, I recuperate Magicka. That's why they're set different, so I can even recoup faster. Okay, really, and then get the synergies. So I control the synergies, and I also control the recovery. Really, really good. Now, let's go ahead and get into the skills. Okay, so I'm using Tormentors, and I'm using Tremor Scale. So I'm going to be using the Shield Assault. Rush an enemy and ram them down, dealing 3,008 physical damage and stunning them for 3 seconds. You gain a damage shield after the attack, absorbing 6,595 damage for 6 seconds. This portion scales off our max health. We're going to use Pierce Armor. That's a no-brainer. It's going to give the major and minor breach. But add that to the Tremor Scale, we're increasing stam DPS. Radiant Ward. One of the only, if not the only shield in the game that scales off of how many enemies is nearby by 9%. And it goes ahead and protects us for 12,000 damage. And that even scales higher depending on how many enemies. We're going to use Silver Leash for our pull. So if we have any range mobs, we pull them. Our Restoring Focus. This is the bread and butter for Templar tanks. It gives us our major resolve, which is the only great asset, but also one of the hindrance, because it's hard to kite as a Templar tank because it's stationary. But it does up our resistance considerably, as I showed you. Now, consequently, we're also going to get that minor into the passives. So when we take a look at, I believe it's on Restoring Light. Okay, one thing really quick. Restoring Spirit, our costs are 5% cheaper on this. Could be an Adder Spears, I think it is. Minor protection for 6 seconds when activating. That's how I have more mitigation than guess who? The DK. I have no mitigation set except a trigger. Yet, I'm at 33 and 31. Seeing is believing, guys. And that's the facts. I have more mitigation than even the DK. It's amazing. I love it. 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 Okay, Aggressive Warhorn. You know, no surprise. We're going to use our Inner Rage for our range taunt. Now, this is very important. Purifying Light. Now, what this does for us is we're going to deal some damage. Not excessively a lot. But what this does is drops a hot. When the effect ends, a pool of sunlight remains attached to the enemy, healing you and nearby allies for 1,318 health every 2 seconds. Now keep in mind, the set we're going to be utilizing is Tormentor. And we're magnifying that by an additional 8%. That is so yummy, especially when we got to stay in the pocket. Biting jabs. Now remember, my frost staff is precise, and I'm using a critical set. But this is what's killer. When I utilize that and use the Night Mothers, when I deal critical damage, I apply Major Breach. One of the only thing the Templars don't have, unlike the Warden and the DK, is an AoE debuff. So I'm using Night Mothers essentially as an AoE debuff instead of individually taunting and debuffing them. And on top of it, when I use the ability, my weapon damage scales to 43%. Because when I utilize this ability, it gives me major savagery. Of course, we're also going to be using the unstable wall. Now, this goes ahead, also applies a shield for us and our allies for 11,000. And on top of it, when it ends, we get an additional shield. And it also can apply the riddle to our enemies, thus increasing the damage they take. Really cool. Now also repentance. I go through trash like a saw. So of course, another way to sustain is using repentance. And then if there's a chance that the war horn's blown by the healer, I can use solar disturbance. So this is really good because also it has what? Major maim, reducing enemy damage by 10%. Thus, another form of mitigation, and it has the synergy. It's really, really, really a fun build to play. This is a tremendous build to play, and I know you will too. So if you want to try tanking and you've been, a little leery or hesitant, go ahead, strap on the Templar tank and give it a ride. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. And one last thing, if you want to check out how I allocated the CP system to maximize its potential, become a member today and check it out. As always, have a nice day.